This is Afterlife VR, an action horror game that puts you in the role of Adam Bernhard, a young rookie police officer on night patrol. Armed with a pistol and a flashlight, you must uncover the secrets of the Black Rose Mental Hospital while keeping yourself from being an inpatient. This came out a while back on PSVR, but is now coming to PSVR 2, April 19th in North America, and the 20th everywhere else. I never played it on PC, so this one was actually a bit of a surprise for me in a few ways, so make sure you stick around to see whether this is worth adding to your PSVR 2 library. Hey guys, it's Chris from the VR Grid and welcome to the channel. If you like this video, give it a like, and if you're interested in more VR content from us, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss new videos as they drop. And if you're looking to join our VR conversations, feel free to leave a comment, or even better, join us each and every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific here for the Virtual Boys podcast. Now, story-wise, I don't want to give away too much here, as I want to keep this brief and spoiler-free as possible. Your younger sister Allison was recently sent back to the Black Rose Mental Hospital, the very place that you have just so happened to be called in to investigate, following a report of missing patients and hospital workers. Arriving during a rainy night, the place seems deserted, so of course you head in alone because it's a horror game, and why wouldn't you? And that's all I'm going to tell you, as Afterlife VR only runs about the length of a horror movie, playing like a mystery horror film and clocking in around that 90 minutes to 2.5 hour mark, depending on how much you explore or how long you spend on the handful of puzzles. The story here is not anything special, but when combined with the creepiness of the game and the multitude of jump scares, it does make for a fun little time in VR, if not an overly memorable one. Now, those expecting another Resident Evil game, you can drop those expectations right now, as Afterlife VR is not only an indie game, but a far simpler and straightforward experience in every possible way. Gameplay-wise, I was actually fairly impressed with how Afterlife played, as indie horror games tend to be a little rough around the edges and filled with a certain amount of jank. Thankfully, Afterlife feels pretty polished here and controls quite well, despite its odd run mechanic that has you pressing forward on the right stick to run. This creativity I could have done without, as it simply made turning and running feel like a twin-stick shooter, but it never got in the way of the gameplay either. Additionally, I'm not sure what I think of the game's choice to auto-open and close cabinets and drawers once you grab them. You'll spend a lot of time opening and searching in the game, and it certainly makes for a less janky time in the whole process, but yet anytime a game takes control of your arms and hands in VR, to me it always feels a bit immersion breaking. Regardless though, this is a minor gripe, and when combined with the game's basic but functional pop-up inventory system that you have in each hand, the mechanics of grabbing, storing, and using found items was painless. Early parts of the game see you armed with only a flashlight, and it burns through batteries, so early on you will get used to searching high and low for additional batteries. In addition to batteries, health syringes and ammo for the pistol you will eventually get will make up the majority of your inventory usage, short of the odd key or mission item. Now, first and foremost, Afterlife VR is a horror game, and how successful it is at that, I guess, really depends on how you handle scares in VR. I'm dead inside, so nothing really scares me, though I will say that the game does an admirable job of keeping the creep factor high enough throughout its short runtime by pulling on all the classic horror tropes. Much of your time spent here in Black Rose Mental Hospital will see you looking for keys and numeric codes to open doors. Mixing things up are a handful of puzzles, but nothing too difficult, as my dumbass blew through them, so I don't know if I can actually call them puzzles, as maybe calling them more make-work tasks is appropriate, as they primarily consist of finding items and doing things to gain access to new areas. Yes, I'm staying very spoiler-free here. Personally, I like that the game didn't do a hard stop while I tried to figure out some mind-bending puzzle, but others might be disappointed here. As a whole, the game keeps a pretty steady pace forward, as it definitely seems to want to deliver on a movie-style pacing and length. As such, it doesn't waste much time in giving you a pistol, which thankfully makes Afterlife feel like less of a walking simulator, as most VR games can often be. Unfortunately, the combat here is incredibly underdeveloped and unsatisfying, with the whole process of shooting deranged patients coming off kind of lifeless and bland and, well, easy. Honestly, it's essentially one step up from pointing at enemies and saying bang. Making matters worse, ammo and health was always in ample supply, with the latter almost never being necessary, as I rarely took any damage. Though, I must confess, I was playing on normal difficulty setting, and playing on hard might help in this regard. Unfortunately, the shooting is so meh and the enemy's attacks so simplistic, I can't really see it making much of a difference, which is such a missed opportunity, as ammo and health conservation can make games like this all the better. Later parts of the game will introduce the ability to use telekinesis to pick up and throw items at enemies, But unfortunately, this is so woefully underdeveloped both in the narrative and gameplay that it's really only utilized for a few late game puzzles and the end game boss. On the visual side of things, Afterlife VR will certainly never be confused for a AAA offering such as Resident Evil 8. And while I know it's not fair to compare indie titles to RE8, honestly, it's hard not to, as the bar has been set pretty high. However, in the headset, Afterlife VR comes off above average and makes up for its unfortunately detailed but lower resolution textures with an excellent use of dynamic lighting from the flashlight that just bathes the game's hallways and dilapidated rooms in a shadow-filled creepiness that definitely elevates the whole game. This is made all the more effective with the PSVR 2's high-contrast OLED display that really sells this whole experience with dark darks and bright lights when the flashlight comes out to play. Afterlife VR does suffer though from what appears to be an over-reliance of anti-aliasing, which in addition to the game's lower resolution textures just gives the whole game a softness which had me second guessing my eyeglass prescription. Think Switchback, but without all that horrible pop-in. Other areas of the game such as character models and other animations also come off a little undercooked, and this does hinder Afterlife somewhat in delivering on the scares. However, thankfully, the audio side of things helps to elevate the game where its visuals can't, filling the sound mix with that horror movie weight to its silence. You guys know what I mean. Additionally, Afterlife VR never fails to miss an opportunity to make a door creak or drop a random sound in the background to raise that skin on the back of your neck, and it loves to use the shock of a loud sound to get a jump scare out of players. At times, the sound of your footsteps can be deafening, and Afterlife relishes in knowing when to keep the sound mix minimal and nuanced so it can repeatedly catch players off guard. Its music is used very minimally here, as such, players who are easily susceptible to jump scares are sure to have a good time here. Now, voice acting does come off a little indie here, but it still manages to deliver the goods without sounding too cheesy, which I was thankful for considering our protagonist does like to talk to himself. And that brings me to my final thoughts and review score. Afterlife VR definitely doesn't scream next-gen VR, and it isn't the next great thing to play on your brand new headset. This is paint-by-numbers VR horror, guys, but I'm not saying don't play it. Though it does nothing overly special story-wise and comes off pretty underdeveloped in its combat, those who love horror games and are looking for a scary time in VR are likely to find Afterlife's polished movement controls and creepy atmosphere compelling and worth the low asking price. The VR Grid gives Afterlife VR a 6.5 out of 10. Afterlife VR is a short experience that doesn't have many new ideas, but it also doesn't overstay its welcome, offering up a nice slice of VR horror entertainment for those looking for a little aperitif after finishing Resident Evil 8 and now waiting for the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake. Guys, that's it from us. If you like this video, please hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe. You guys know the deal. As always, I'm Chris from the VR Grid, and I will catch you on my next video.